Our next speaker was 3 days into his new role when he and his team were told to go home to work. And from then on, Campbell Wilson, CEO of Scoot, has been trying to keeping things together while its planes couldn't fly. But today, with 25% of capacity up in the air, which is a good number, he's looking forward to better, brighter days ahead. So please welcome Campbell Wilson, CEO of Scoot. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
It's been a year since on the same stage, right?
More people, thank goodness.
I know, right? We got 5 times the numbers. All right, so it must be tough running a low-cost airline in Singapore, which has no domestic market, and then borders in Asia remain closed.
Well, I think it's been tough running any airline anywhere. You know, the industry lost $140 billion US last year. It'll lose about $50 billion this year. But yeah, Singapore, obviously, given the borders, given our international reliance, we were incredibly affected early on. There was a period where we were down 100% in terms of our flight capacity and obviously everything else. And the business has scaled for clearly a lot more than that. As borders has reopened, as cargo demand has held up, as there's been a bit of support for strategic connectivity of Singapore around the region, we've been able to get up to, as you say, about 25% capacity. But you know, it's been difficult. It's been difficult from a business perspective, and it's also been difficult from a staff perspective.
Right, completely. But it's good, 25% of capacity up in the air. So, but what is so you're keeping your eye on the future. I mean, this is what we've had to do in this period, is like keep your eye on the horizon. So what is the future telling you?
Well, I think what the past is telling us about the future, if we look in the recent past, those countries that have opened up their artificial impediments to travel, predominantly domestically, whether it's Russia or for a while China, Australia for a while, they've all seen a very, very fast and significant rebound. The last 4th of July weekend in the US, more people traveled than in 2019. So I think, for all the reasons that other presenters have said, I think there's going to be a significant, strong rebound in travel. Now, if we look further in history, I think there's even more reason for optimism. There's a chart that I've been sharing with my team throughout this period to try and put things into historical context.
Can we have the chart, please? Which actually is, yeah.
Yeah, so this chart shows the international passenger traffic since 1945. And it also indicates, in terms of the vertical arrows, some very significant external events that at the time we all thought were disastrous for travel and would be meaningful and impactful for a long time, ranging from the oil crisis through Iraq War I, Gulf War, Gulf crisis, 9/11, SARS. And you can see that it didn't really have a material effect on the overall trend. They were blips. Now, quite clearly, COVID-19 is a much bigger blip. But I think in the fullness of time, we will see that trend continue for all of the inherent reasons that people have talked about, travel being a fundamental human desire.
So 5 years from now, looking back, it will be...
I don't think it will be quite as invisible as some of the previous ones, but I think the trend will reassert.
All right. So when we started in this pandemic, people were predicting, short haul will be the first to recover, but what's playing out appears to be long haul, right? With what we're seeing with the vaccinated traveling. Singapore, the first one was Germany. So how does that impact Scoot, which is mainly short haul, regional?
Well, I think it needs to be borne in mind that the reason that long haul seems to be recovering first is because the artificial constraints to travel are being removed on long haul routes. It just so happens that the long-haul markets, at least from Singapore perspective, are the ones that have a more advanced vaccination rollout. But I think the evidence in other countries is that it's the VFR and leisure market that recovers fastest. I think it's less prone to substitution, that business demand is probably going to suffer for a while. So for us, clearly, it's impactful because the bulk of our network is in Asia. And ironically, even though most of our network is in Asia, we've resumed our Berlins, our Athens, our Jeddah flights, which is a bit odd, but hey, we'll take what we can get at the moment.
Wherever you can fly, right? So when do you think artificial constraints will be lifted on short haul?
I don't have that crystal ball. I think clearly we're seeing good announcements from a number of countries in Australasia about reopening and either reducing or eliminating quarantine. I think it's as much about managing the local population's risk assessment and a political consideration. So those things are not for airline professionals to be opining on. They're above my pay grade.
Yeah, so, it's been a period where we've basically had to kind of focus on what we can control because there's so many factors beyond our control. So let's talk about what you've been able to control and what you fixed or improved during this period within your airline, the technology.
Yeah, well, it was a perfect opportunity really to prepare the business for a new future, taking a opportunity when we had more staff than the business required. We had not the day-to-day urgency of running a 24/7 airline. So we've upgraded the revenue management system, upgraded the flight planning system, the rostering system. We're rolling out a new website on totally new architecture. We've deployed a new in-flight service and entertainment portal. We've embarked on the IOSA security certification to complement all the health certifications that we'd previously acquired. So these things have a few benefits. One, they make us more operationally robust. Two, they make us more efficient and therefore lower our unit costs. Three, they improve the service to customers. And four, they allow us to either earn more revenue or increase the yield of the customers that we're carrying. So all of these things don't really pay off in the short term, but they're investments that we're making that will certainly pay off in the medium term.
Right. And the new website, you say your digital website and mobile gives you 2/3 of revenues, pre-COVID, right? So do you expect that number to increase?
No, because I think it's sort of in an equilibrium. There are some markets that are just more attuned to buying through travel agents or taking group tours, for example. A number of the North Asian countries are like that. I think there's always a place for a travel agent. Bricks and mortar travel agents, I think, will struggle a bit to restart just by virtue of the inertia that it takes. So I think 2/3 of our revenue coming through direct online platforms is probably about.
Okay, that's an optimum number for you.
I mean, for us, optimum is 100% really, but practically speaking, that's the equilibrium.
Okay, all right. So we had a poll earlier and say, what would consumers like post-COVID, right? What would be the things that they value the most? And the top choice was flexibility, the ability to cancel, get refunds. So do you think this is a forever feature now in airlines?
Absolutely not. I think flexibility clearly is something that people want now. I think it's something that is absolutely necessary to ensure that we get people's confidence in making a travel booking and get the industry restarted. But part of the reason that differentiating flexibility has always existed is because not everyone values the same attributes in the same way. Some people do value flexibility very highly, but over time we'll find that some people value it less and less, and they will resent having to effectively pay for it, bundled into the price of the ticket. If I offer an alternative that is more restrictive but significantly cheaper, some people will choose to buy that. And so I think it's just a matter of time before these restrictions reassert themselves. I mean, it's human nature, it is market segmentation, the whole business is built on this sort of thing.
Okay, so we have a question. So obviously Scoot and SQ can't do it alone. So how can the Scoot and regional carriers work together better to jumpstart getting back the over 44 million intra-ASEAN travel we saw in 2019?
I think, one, we've been able to deploy about 1/3 of the group's capacity through this crisis to make sure there is connectivity. I mean, if you're trying to fly an Australian airline to Australia over the past years, you're out of luck. So we've done a job in keeping Australia connected to the world, New Zealand as well. I think a lot of it is about pioneering and trialling both the health safety measures that we've got on board, as well as the technical measures such as the IATA pass, the other digital enablers that will be necessary to accommodate travel when it returns in volume. And also to be an advocate and in some cases push very strongly governments to get their act together and take a travel-friendly posture with respect to quarantines and testings and risk-based assessment of origin countries and getting the different stakeholders, as Subhash mentioned before, to talk to each other, health and immigration and customs and transport, not to each try and reinvent the wheel and come up with solutions that actually already exist somewhere and can be repurposed for this.
Right.
So I think that's the role that we play as a significant carrier in the region.
Okay, so we have another question. Will SIA or will Scoot, take the same approach as Qantas or Air New Zealand and mandating vaccinations for all passengers?
We don't think that's a role for an airline. We think that's a role for governments.
Okay.
Our view is, and our position currently is, that we accept all comers. If you want to come into Singapore, there's a requirement that you're vaccinated. But if you want to transit through Singapore, that's an individual decision. And I think, as been repeatedly said, including by the doctor this morning, the incidence of transmission in flight is incredibly low, according to the medical studies, not the aviation studies.
Okay. So now let's talk about your new aircraft. It's incredible during this period too that you've taken delivery of the first 3 A321 neo aircraft, and you have a total of 16 on order. Now, what does this mean long term for Scoot?
Well, it does seem a bit odd taking delivery of aircraft when you've got a third of them sitting on the ground, but these were obviously committed to sometime prior. The A321 does fill a gap for us. Our narrow-body A320s are 180 seats. 787 wide bodies are between 330 and 375. The A321 is 236. So it fills a size gap, which allows us to better match capacity demand based on time of day or day of week or even seasonality across the year. It's also about 15% cheaper per seat to operate and obviously less emittive. So in that respect, it fills a gap and allows us to operate more efficiently.
More efficiently. You say unit cost is about 15% cheaper per seat, right?
Yep.
Than the A320. Okay.
Yes.
So I know when you were with Singapore Airlines Group, you were really responsible for, you were on the team that was responsible for the transformation, of the airline, the digital transformation. So there's a lot of talk about how COVID has accelerated the consumer shift to apps, and you got AirAsia talking about super app and all that. How is your group thinking about that? How does Scoot sit into the SIA super platform system?
It's an SIA group story because we consider the airlines, obviously airlines, but they're also very effective and efficient customer acquiring tools that can then be used by the digital ecosystem. So over the last few years, we've put a lot of investment into things like Chris Shop, which is our online retailer of both travel-related and non-travel-related services. Chris Plus, which you can use your Chris Flyer points to pay for groceries or gas or other things. Pelago, which is a destination recommendation information function. Parcel, which is a logistics B2B, B2C, small package e-commerce delivery mechanism. And it's all built on a proprietary blockchain for which we hold a patent, so that you can enter through any one of these properties and be recognized. You can earn Chris Flyer miles, spend Chris Flyer miles. I guess the only thing we haven't done that others have done is call it a super app, but we think that undersells it. Actually, it's probably a super ecosystem.
Okay, I thought you said super ecosystem. Sorry, it's a super ecosystem.
My New Zealand accent.
A super ecosystem, okay, and really you set up the platform, for Chris Shop, for example. I heard that your revenues just absolutely went.
Well, it's perfect timing. We did that partly because we wanted to be able to sell things to people who were traveling. Obviously, in the last 18 months, no one's really been traveling, but people have accrued a huge amount of Chris Flyer points they want to spend. They've continued to accrue them through credit card and other things. And so this is a huge vehicle to put that $700 million of accrued value into use. And so the revenues that Chris Shop has enjoyed, I won't go into specifics, but have more than doubled, and doubled from a very significant level. And this is independent of actually operating the airline. So these investments in the digital ecosystem have actually been very worthwhile.
Right, and it's kind of proved the theory that you could actually earn revenues from other things than, other than flights.
Absolutely, and at a much better margin. The airline margins are 4 to 8%.
Right. Okay, so we have another question. Can Value Alliance and Star Alliance APAC, that's going to be based in Singapore soon, members be the group that advocates getting ASEAN countries to offer no quarantine travel for vaccinated travelers? Because right now countries are sort of doing unilateral, just as Thailand just now, Kun Namfon was saying, that actually Singapore is on the list for them, but when we come back, we get quarantined. So, can these alliances help to push to a more multilateral approach?
I think every little bit helps, but I think the heavy lifting really is done by the likes of IATA and AAPA because they speak on the industry's behalf. I think where the alliances come into play is backing up the policy discussion with actually implementing commercial functions and tools to make the reality happen. So I think the front line is the IATA,
associations.
AAPA, and then the execution is the airlines, either individually or through alliances.
Okay. All right, let's talk payments. There are two hot models. It's come up here. It's like buy now, pay later. And then there's another one that talks about pay when you fly. What do you think of this model? Have you done BNPL yet?
I think they're new terms for old things, to be honest. Pay when you fly has always been a function that's been available to people. Typically, it's been reserved for the higher airfares. It's called a ticketing time limit. You pay a higher airfare, you pay a couple of days before departure. If you want to have a discounted fare, you typically have to pay earlier or pay immediately. So it's not a new thing. But the whole airline industry cash flow model is based on taking payment in advance of travel. And so to go to a majority being buy now or pay when you fly is a bit of a difficult ask. Just remember back when business stopped last year, SIA Group was sitting on nearly $2.5 billion of people's cash that we subsequently had to refund, and we did. But that's cash that was used to fund the business. With respect to buy now, pay later, I can see it from a consumer's perspective that it's attractive and that has some benefits that a credit card doesn't. But I've never seen a commercial proposition that makes sense for us. I mentioned that the industry has a 4 to 8% operating margin. Most of the time, the commissions that are asked by the buy now, pay later schemes are that much or more, 4 times what a credit card costs us. And by law in many countries, we can't actually pass that cost through to the consumer. So what these BNPL propositions are asking is essentially to take the whole margin that the airline is operating at, and that's just not viable. So if someone comes with a more attractive proposition, I'm open to listen to it. If governments change the rules such that I can pass the cost on to consumers, I'm happy to look at it. But at the moment, it's more of only when there's a competitive requirement.
If it makes sense commercially to you, because it does give you a new customer reach, especially for low-cost flights, no?
Yes, but the question is, if I'm giving away the entire margin of the airline to attract this customer, I've got to attract a huge number more customers to make it worthwhile, and can I?
All right. So do you think COVID will accelerate the flight to direct channels? And especially now, that NDC kind of has, after very slow progress, but it has gained momentum among key airlines.
I think it absolutely has driven to direct, not just direct airline, but online generally. And for the reasons that I mentioned before, the inertia of setting up a bricks and mortar business again, I think the gap will continue to widen. But this is not an anti-travel agent. I think travel agents selling online and indeed some that sell bricks and mortar will survive. With respect to NDC, I don't even understand why we're still having this conversation as an industry. All of the big airlines are fully on board. All of the big GDSs are fully on board. All of the big TMCs and retail agencies are on board. It is simply a new communications protocol that delivers better content. And so to the extent that it also democratizes access to that content and increases competition, that's a good thing. But I don't see why NDC is being held up as this divisive tool. It's just a new communications platform. It's like going from the fax to the internet.
Okay. All right. So now you rejoined Scoot in 2020. And as I said in the introduction, your third day was when everyone got home, right? So
it wasn't personal.
What new habit have you adopted, to try and keep that team together during this 18 months?
Yeah. So one thing I have adopted is every Friday I send a Happy Friday message, and it's about what I've observed during the course of the week that has given me some hope, what new things we've been able to do, what things might be coming up. Just making sure that the staff are aware of what's going on. They feel they can relate to me. I benefit from it too. I mean, it's good to just take pause occasionally and remind ourselves why there's a reason for hope.
Right, so a Happy Friday update. And do you think this habit will continue when things return?
I think so. Whether it's every week, I'm not sure, because it can be a bit burdensome.
Hopefully you'll be so busy managing all the customer demand that you won't have time for that. So what are you most looking forward to right now? Like, over the horizon, what are you most looking forward to?
We've spent a lot of time theorizing and scenario planning and building for the future, and I'm just sick of all this, theoretical part. I just want to get to execute. It's fun running an airline. It's 24/7. There's energy and effervescence, and you meet the cabin crew who are exciting, and you meet the pilots who have this professional pride in what they do, and in the office with people and spontaneously ideating. I miss that, and I want to get back to doing that. I'm bloody sick of doing scenario plans.
Yeah, I think we all have like 5 drawers, scenario A, scenario E, right? So, we are with you, aren't we? With Campbell, like we just want to get on with it and do what we love and do what we do best, right? And connect our customers. So please join me in thanking Campbell for joining us today. Thank you.